All right. Today,
So
today
are we
we're just
starting?
going to wax. We're just going to wax in a very loving way about some recent changes to Microsoft 365 that we're really excited about and that make us happy on a day-to-day basis. So just kind of a what's new and what's current in terms of what's making us happy these days. So no Todd today. The rest of us, I think you understand. The folks on the call know who's who and who does what and our various points of view. So here's the agenda for today. I'm going to talk about these new favorite things across three or so main areas. The core of SharePoint, some Viva updates, other Microsoft 365 workloads, and then we'll talk about developer-only things, just especially for Rob Windsor today, I think, for developers only. So Emily, you want to start talking about site scripts and site templates?
I would love to pass that one over to Mark.
That's Mark's. I'm sorry.
No worries.
Oh man. So I think site templates are awesome. I think that when they were launched back in 2019, there was a lot of splash and there wasn't a lot of activity on them and not a lot of expansion, but they've really become incredibly useful. They allow us to push information architecture out into new sites very painlessly, and we can do sort of mixing and matching of what a site template actually is. It doesn't have to be a template for a real, it doesn't have to be the whole site. In other words, you can do componentry. And so I like to build, I might have a site template that's something like create the policy library, or create a status updates library, or create 5 site columns, or whatever. You can do sort of a mix and match and apply multiple templates and get multiple artifacts into a site very easily. So that's actually something I like a lot, and I use it on an almost daily basis. And I think people probably don't give it as much attention as it could use. Don't think necessarily site templates like we're going to come up with the master project template, but think about what componentry do we need.
And Mark, it seems like every time I try to provision a new site, the experience is slightly different.
That's frustrating. And we're supposed to be saying things we like, though, right?
Okay.
They took a few steps back along the way. Like, you can't see the progress of what's happening when you apply a site template right now. I know they're working on that to get that back in there. So again, stick with it. It's actually a very powerful engine, and you can do a lot with it.
I'll say it nicely. It's like a box of chocolates.
You never know if you're going to get a leadership connection.
That's right.
Hey, wait, this is me too. So one of the reasons that I'm sort of bullish on these site templates. They used to be called site designs. Now they're called site templates. But all the PowerShell commandlets still say site designs, so I can't get it out of my head. So they just added a new site script action that is add content types from hub. And this thing is really, really key, because what we've been doing for the last couple of years, or at least what I've been doing, is implementing content types in the site template by building them in the site template and applying them there. I haven't been using the content type hub because there was no way to say, go and grab the content type from the content type hub or the content type gallery. Now we have this verb that allows us to say, oh, well, we have a policy content type already built in the content type gallery. Let's instantiate that in this site, and then it will continue to sync if there were any changes made centrally. So I've made a lot of distributed information architecture decisions, which I understand we can now retrofit to turn into centralized information architecture decisions. I haven't tested that yet, but Sean Squires says it works. So this is really big, because it's going to allow us to do what we really wanted to do with the content type hub all along.
All right, I'll talk about collapsible sections, and I'm playing the part of Mark today, weirdly, with here's what I love, but here's what I don't love. So Emily's written a really nice post. I love Emily's post. Haha. On on this, there's a link in the resources slide. Just because we can create collapsible sections probably doesn't mean we should. And a couple things to look out for. Control F search in collapsed sections and Viva Topics topic cards in collapsed sections do not currently work. So, but otherwise, love the new capability, the ability to kind of create new user experiences with collapsible sections on pages. Emily, do you have anything to add to that? I know you care a lot about this too.
I think one of the big benefits of collapsible sections is, especially with longer pages, they serve as a mini information architecture, so people can get a really good idea very quickly of what's on that page.
Kind of like the pipe separated table of contents with anchor tags, right? Or
Absolutely.
Yep. I thought you might like the collapsed bridge image in the section page there. I was really proud of that one. All right, Emily, to you.
So they have released the Microsoft Editor and inline images in the text web part in SharePoint. This is great because previously the Microsoft Editor was a browser add-in, so now it's just natively there, so you can catch all those lowercase p's every time you're typing out SharePoint. And then for the inline images, this is really helpful. I talk a lot about SharePoint News, and when we were previously structuring pages, you would need to use the different section layouts to have some text on one side and then some images on the other. And because the pages are responsive, you could never get this exactly how you wanted. But now that we have these inline images, you can add those rich pictures to add context to your text very, very easily.
We have a question from the last slide around that content in collapsible pages. So you can't Control F find it, but is that content available from a search perspective?
It is.
My guess is yes. Okay. Yep.
Yeah. The only problem is it's when they're collapsed that you can't do Control F. So if they're expanded, you won't have a problem with Control F. So what you don't want to have happen is someone find that page in search results and then go to the page, have it all be collapsed and have there be a lot of sections and get frustrated because they can't find the content then.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, that's super confusing.
Anybody want to represent Todd on this call?
Rob
Windsor had a...
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, Julie. I was going to say Rob had another question. He was just saying that there have been, about the collapsible sections, have we noticed any of the out-of-the-box web parts not working well besides the topics cards?
I haven't really tested them, but I would be interested to learn more about that for sure.
Not that I can think of offhand. I've used them a fair amount, and I can't think of any that haven't worked, although I wouldn't be surprised if there were some that didn't.
Yeah, there's a couple. I think it's like the news one and events. I'll have to look to see exactly which ones. But if you collapse or if the section is collapsed and then you expand it and then collapse it again, it won't. The web parts don't render correctly. So,
okay.
But that's been a known issue for like several months. So they might have fixed it by now.
Good to know. Did not know that.
Yeah, I've only been banging text in there, so I'll take a look at that, Rob. Thank you.
Since we've interrupted, I wanted to make a comment around the content type stuff from a developer perspective. Mark was talking about adding content types from Hub, and I think that one of the big key pieces to what he's saying is around the updating piece of that. So when you do it from the content type Hub and you make a change, like let's say to display name or whatever, and that is syncing across your sites that you're using those content types in, that's super helpful. From a developer perspective, we've always had the ability or known that as long as we're provisioning with code, be that code like from PowerShell or using REST endpoints or using the CSOM or whatever those programming interfaces are, if we're creating site columns and content types and we use the same identifier, i.e. the GUID that we create them with, that they are from a search perspective the same, yet we don't get that updating benefit unless we're writing code that's going to go crawl for those IDs and then do those updates programmatically. But so this is nice to see from the perspective of really being able to start using the content type hub again, because it was so badly broken in the previous iterations of it, I guess.
Right, exactly. So what I've been doing is making changes to my site design and
Mhm.
reapplying it because I'm using that common GUID, but I've been able to put the content type across many, many sites. Now I'll
Right.
be able to just point to the content type with that GUID in the content type gallery, and I won't have to reapply the site design, site template.
Yeah.
Is there any chance
Kind
we
of a-
can give this a punchier name than Content Hub Sync Site Script Action?
That's there so that we can get you to say it.
It's so painful. Red
That's
leather,
fast.
yellow leather, red leather, yellow leather.
Hey, Mark,
Number one.
just a random question on the content type hub. So, because I haven't used it in a while,
Yeah, me neither.
can you provision the content type, the content types and the site columns using a site column in the hub?
Yes.
So that you're not like going into the GUI or the
Oh.
UI to like manually create every content type hub. Can you do it programmatically in a site design and then apply it?
Sorry, you lost me on the restatement.
Oh, in the hub, right? Like, how do you
Yes.
create a new one? Can you do that with a site design in the hub?
No, you wouldn't do it with. I mean, I
Okay.
suppose you could, but I don't think you'd do it with a site design. You'd probably
do it manually.
with PowerShell or code or something.
Okay.
But typically you're building the common, the enterprise content types in the content type gallery manually because there's some iteration and nonsense.
Okay, that's what I was asking.
Yeah.
Do you do it manually in the hub?
But
in
it's
the gallery.
still,
Sorry,
I mean,
gallery.
it's still as I understand it, even though the content type gallery has lipstick on it, it's still the content type hub site in the background.
Right.
So all the same rules would apply.
Okay. All right.
Mike.
Anyway, just curious.
Mike Dixon, go ahead, my friend.
Yeah, I was wondering if somebody could elaborate on what the issues are with the content type hub that you feel that this resolves. Because I'm a longtime believer in the content type hub. I use it for everything I do all the time. And
Yeah.
I don't understand why there's so many people out there who are so upset by it.
The negativity is somewhat misplaced, I think. It actually does what it's supposed to do, but it doesn't do it in such a way that it's very predictable. So if I create a content type called policy in the old content type hub, it will be syndicated to every site in your tenant in SharePoint Online. And then oftentimes you don't want that. Since we've gone from a deep topology to a broad topology, you end up with content types in a lot of places that you just don't want them. So that's one downside. The other downside is that the syndication, the timer job that runs in the background to do that syndication is absolutely unpredictable. You could create, and you know this, you could create a content type in the content type hub and it might show up in all your sites in 10 minutes or 2 weeks. We just don't know.
Or not at all was the reason I sort of abandoned it, and given that I write code, I don't care.
Yeah, the interesting thing with the not at all is that there are some debugging tools that most people, at least I don't think most people know about. You can go into the syndication settings for a site, and oftentimes it's just a collision with a site column or something. Right. Yeah. But that's absolutely unapparent to most people. To most people, it's just broken. So that kind of stuff is, and I think that syndication would probably still have that problem today, even though it's the content type gallery, because again, that's just sort of lipstick on it. But with the content type gallery, you choose which content types you want in a site. In other words, instead of it being a push, it's a pull. And so that keeps your IA a lot cleaner.
That's interesting. Are people aware then of the re-indexing the site workaround?
Meaning what?
So if I publish, because you're right, the timer job that replicates the stuff is wildly unpredictable. Although I have found recently it seems to be much faster, even if I don't mess with it. But if I'm looking for something right away, if I go to the destination site where I want the content and re-index it, if you re-index that site, whatever's in the list of commands in the re-index also includes pulling new content types from the content type hub. And I have found that every time I go and I do that, I can pretty much guarantee that I have my new content types within about 15 minutes.
That's a good trick and one I use for lists all the time with search indexing.
Sure.
Like if I add
sure.
new lists.
Yes.
Yeah,
columns. Yep.
but I think if you're because they've sort of shuffled the mechanisms around under the covers, I don't think you need to do that anymore. All you need to do is select the content type from the content type gallery to be, because when you're in a site and you're looking at the content type gallery, you can grab a content type that's in you see the site view of it, but then there's the main view of it. You're sort of seeing a it's hard to explain that. So there's the content type gallery that exists for the tenant, and then each site gives you a view into that, and you can grab a content type from that content type gallery. So it should be instant. In other words,
similar interface to say a metadata column, managed metadata column that looks at the term store. You can browse the whole thing.
Yeah, I think it is similar to that. Yes, that's a good analogy.
Okay, interesting.
Right.
All right, I just wanted to throw that out there.
Yep.
Thanks for the info and the update. I was completely unaware of this, and I love that there's a PowerShell command that I can now push to really kick it in the butt.
Well, you've probably seen when you go into the content type gallery, when you go to work with content types in a modern site, you have a different interface. That's the content type gallery. It's a modern page instead of the classic.
Oh,
page.
That one. Yeah. That was missing some features.
Yes, it still is. They're working on it.
Yeah, I forget what it was, but there
Two
was
steps forward, one step back.
It was missing something. I was like, oh, that's cute. I'll get back to it later. Back to class.
Who's gonna do the TK slide? Who wants to be TK?
Dynamic groups and content targeting. Okay, go to the next one. The change here is that we can now use dynamic groups in content targeting, correct?
Yes,
Yeah.
so that applies to the navigation, news, quick links, highlighted content web part, and events web part.
That's actually pretty exciting.
It's a good thing I was muted because I was just like, yep, Todd contributed something. Okay, let's move on. Something I'm excited about and I've been working a lot with lately is Viva Topics. Microsoft has, and this hasn't always been the case. You've seen, I think the results vary a bit in terms of adoption guides and documentation that they provide. The adoption guidance is excellent for Viva Topics. There are scenarios, there are templates for communications that I think are outstanding. So highly recommend those if you have clients who are implementing topics. Very excited about the new workloads coming. I'm seeing it in Outlook Web Access. It's coming to the Outlook client in the future, and Yammer and Teams as well. And improvements in the topic management experience. Just starting to see less time to promote items from suggested to confirmed to published in the managed topics. The dialogue, it's so minor improvements there and visibility into a lot more that's coming. So this is a thing I'm excited about and bullish on in the short term. Still big challenges in terms of governance, especially where you have a decentralized knowledge management function. You kind of have knowledge managers just in pockets all over the organization, kind of getting them together and coaching them up to curate some topics to kind of seed the system. But some of the adoption guidance has things like hackathons. They have templates for things like hackathons. Bring everybody together for a brown bag lunch, spend an hour, and bang out 50 topics, kind of thing. So I think there's some value there. Connections and ACEs.
Yeah, that's me. So this isn't like super new, like last month new, but it's been out for, I don't know, 6-8 months now. And right now, this is our only extension point into the Viva suite. So it's sort of, as a developer, this is really the only part that we get to play with. Something really important: don't confuse adaptive card extensions with adaptive cards. Adaptive card extensions are a combination of SPFX for the back end and then adaptive card for the adaptive card framework for the front end, and putting them together so that we can build these like little mini widgets that really provide a mobile-first, platform-agnostic experience. And I love them because I think they're just the new shiny thing that I get to play with. But I think there also is a fair amount of value in here, especially for remote workers. And you can see some examples of some cards that we built here. Mike, if you want to. So the weather widget that I built, it pulls the weather. Obviously, it's not 85 in Boston, but you've got also, we did a COVID attestation app, which if you could imagine, you could, be in your car, sitting in the parking lot at the office, and you can fill this out, fill out the information and submit it right there on your mobile device. All this data specifically goes back into a SharePoint list, and then you can go on your way. So it really is that mobile first piece. Yeah, and I think that's what?
I had an interesting conversation yesterday around the idea that if we could get the SharePoint framework people to give us a layout, there's 3 layouts for the Viva cards that's shown in that background one. And so there's the one with the title and the text and the image, and there's title and description, and then you also have with the buttons and different combinations, but there's none where it's just an image. And so we were having a conversation yesterday, if we could get to the point where you could just have that button, especially that medium size one, like the COVID-19 check-in, as a image only, and we could get to a point where this layout could look just like the old Windows mobile phone interface. And I'm like, yes, I want that so bad.
I was afraid that's where you were going.
I want it so bad.
Stefan and I were talking about that the other day, and we are working on sort of some newer samples that would have much more. Right now, these are pretty static, right? So you get the image, you get the text, and working on some new samples that are a lot more dynamic, so that have like a refresh or leverage SVGs to pull in data that's actually dynamic, so you can count, or show numbers and stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely need to get that full image so that we can use those dynamic SVGs to get us a Metro UI, because that would just make me super happy.
So you can have a button to all of the apps that are available on that platform.
That's awesome. I love it.
Yep.
And we have a question from Marcel. Can you use dynamic groups to give people access to a team using a dynamic group? People access to a team using. I don't know that I.
Dynamic groups, I think, they've become more first-class citizens, right? And that's why they're available for audience targeting. Can you add them as a member of a group? Is that what you're asking, Marcel?
Yes, it is. So if I have a team, usually I can only add the group that was created with that team. And I'm wondering if I have a dynamic security group,
right,
whether I can add that to the team.
Well, what you're really doing there is what you really want to be doing there is you want to add the dynamic security group to membership in the Microsoft 365 group. And I thought that was possible all the way along. Is it not?
Not sure.
We can take it. Yeah, we can jot it down and ask Todd when he's back online. Right. Emily, is Mike Dixon's commenting that's not possible?
That is not possible. And actually, what's even more frustrating about that is the interface makes it sound like it's possible, because it'll give you a button that says Add Group, which is very deceptive, because what it does is it adds all of the members of that group to the existing group at the time, and then has no relation to the group that you added after you. So it's basically an import members is what it should be labeled as.
It's a static group, not a dynamic group.
It's a nesting of groups problem then, which makes sense, I guess.
Oi.
Now, that said, that's been my experience from way back in the day. If that has changed, then that's wonderful and exciting news. But I haven't heard that has.
It's Microsoft 365. If you don't know if it works, you have to sort of try it.
Yep.
It's like New England weather.
Yeah.
Wait 15 minutes. Yeah.
The fact that
wait
there
15 minutes and clear cache. It'll reindex. Yeah.
the fact that there was a change for dynamic groups and content targeting might lead one to believe that there was a change that would be useful. But
so let's take that as an action and keep looking at look to Todd to give us some clarity on that one.
That would be wonderful. Thanks.
We'll do. Marcel, good to hear from you. Emily, I think you were on about team search.
Yeah, so they've updated it. We now have 4 different search verticals. We have all messages, people, and files. And one that I found really helpful is in messages, you can filter by app mentions and file attachments. What I haven't seen, which I really hope they keep working on, is being able to search for channels and having those show up in the results. They show up in the type ahead options sometimes. We have some channels, like for example, our marketing team, where we use really common words like newsletter or website, and those won't show up in the results. But for our more uniquely named channels, I have found that those are appearing in the search.
Did they fix the problem with when you hit the search results and then you click on one, it takes you to a view that you can't then navigate to back through the channel/team that you are seeing the result for? Do you know what I mean? I could test it, but I think
that this progression has improved that. I'm not sure it's exactly what you want. You sort of want to land in the middle of the chat to exactly the place. Like if you clicked on Nestor Wilkie, you'd sort of want to land in the middle of the chat and be able to see up and down, right?
And I want to see,
can do that.
And to the left, though, I want the left bar to take me to that team to sync into the channel. If it was like in a, you know what I'm getting at? And that part never happened. I don't know if they fixed that. I could look.
Yeah, it used to be totally disconnected. I think it's better than that now.
When you click in and at least when you're referencing a chat, a one-on-one or a group chat, it will contextualize it. So it brings you right to your, gives you top and bottom, and then gives you context. So your search results are right there in the middle.
Yeah.
But does it give you left nav context of the team and the
for.
channel that chat is in too? I think that's what you're asking for.
Wow.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was saying.
Yeah. Yep. Like if you're a member of a lot of teams and they have a lot of channels, I can see how that could be very confusing. Aren't there just breadcrumbs?
There is not. So I tested it in our environment and I can go to the message. So on the right side of the screen, I will see that before and after, but it does absolutely nothing to the left.
I hate that.
Yeah.
It puts you into it depends on whether it's a chat or a team. In a chat, it actually put me into context.
That's fine. The chat part is fine because that's all you really want. The problem is when it's a Teams thing, like a post about a file or whatever, you want to be on that left thing so you can go, oh, what? I especially find this in Microsoft, right? Like if somebody comments on a thread and it's in my feed and I click on it, it takes me there, but then it doesn't sync the left rail up to that team. I'm like, what team am I even in? What channel
I actually just did it for both things. I searched for a word I knew was in a chat, and I searched for a word that I knew was in a team channel, and it in both cases it put me in the right context on the left.
Cool.
So I think it's better now.
All right, just a few minutes left, and still hard to believe, Mark, you're going to lose your brand as resident curmudgeon because you've been the most positive person on this call.
Notice though how no matter how positive we try to be, we have to talk about a bunch of stuff that doesn't work. I mean, we really were trying to be positive here.
Love's just a very strong word. Maybe things we like.
This stuff
things
doesn't
we're not
piss us
super negative about.
We were going to call it things that don't piss us off as much as other stuff does, but we thought that was a little
things that suck less.
Wasn't very Valentine's Day like.
Krista, I was thinking maybe stuff that sucks less, but yes, I think we're on the same page there.
Yeah, good point.
All right, Microsoft lists, Emily?
Yes. So Mike pointed me towards this article by Lorianne Strant that I think is very, very interesting. We're essentially just breaking down what is capable in Microsoft lists with a board view versus Planner. And there's a very strong argument that maybe you don't need Planner anymore. There's some things that you can do, like restore items from recycle bins, see previous versions, identify who modified a task and when, be notified when a task is modified. And those are all things you can't do in those group planner boards now. So especially if you have a complex team, or maybe some organizations that are struggling with trust on the planner boards, Microsoft lists might be a little bit better for you because they're more auditable.
Yeah, I actually was involved in a Twitter discussion about this with Lorian and some other people, and the question was, well, do we need Planner anymore? I mean, maybe not.
Yeah, I think the only benefit really, I think, left of Planner is the ability to surface that stuff in like the To-Do app and stuff like that, right? So
and to integrate with Project.
I thought you were going to say.
Oh,
I thought you were going to say the Great Planner API.
Oh my God! Please don't get me started. This would solve all the problems, right? Because the problem with the Planner API, not that I haven't said this, 400 million or so times, is that there is no application security context to be able to work with the Planner API. So from a provisioning perspective or building solution perspective, it's absolutely useless. And there, I've ruined it. And now I have totally ruined the whole things we love.
But this is fantastic.
This is fantastic.
You have an API.
Yes.
You have an API that you can do everything you want to with.
Yeah.
So we're at time or close to time. I know, Julie, we haven't hit any of the dev stuff yet. This is a lot to ask you to cover in a minute.
Yeah, meh. So the SharePoint Framework 1.14 release is imminent this month. Hopefully, there's a list of stuff. If you do join the PNP calls, you'll hear Vesa talk about this. The one coming up on Thursday, tomorrow. Vesa will cover where we're at with the 1.14 release. Given that I'm a co-maintainer, I suppose I'll for those on this call, they will hear early that we will be releasing PNP.js 3.0, which is our next major version, on Monday. So we have finally, after 12 arduous months, are ready to release 3.0. It's a huge re-architecture. From a developer experience, hopefully the changes will be minimal, but under the covers, huge re-architecture. I need to give a great, big, huge shout out to Patrick Rogers, who is technically just amazing. And so that is all I have to say on that.
Awesome. Thanks, Julie. A lot of resources that we'll leave people with. The latest SharePoint roadmap pit stops, the article from Lorian, the Collapsible Sections article from Emily, JSON schema for site templates, the Viva topics update, and those adoption resources that we talked about. So plenty here to dig into when we post the slides, post the video, etc. Please feel free to keep the chat going. And in 2 weeks, we're going to work on Help Me to Help You. So we've all had successful and less than successful engagements with technical support organizations, but we've definitely learned over time some best practices for interacting with them. So we know some of it from the buy side and some of it from the sell side, being in the support business to a degree. So 2 weeks from now, Help Me to Help You, engaging with support. Thank you, everybody, for taking some time over the midday hour with us. And unless there's anything else, we'll talk in 2 weeks.
Thanks, everybody.
Everybody, thanks.